Hello, everyone, and pleasant afternoon to all of you. We are really excited to have you on board to this discussion, and I can already see around 50 people who've logged in. We are grateful that taken some time out of your busy schedule for this panel discussion. As you know, the topic today is selling in a virtual world. It's a topic of extreme importance, and suddenly it has become even more vital and relevant considering that most of the nation is working from home. As this is a discussion webinar, I would like to urge participation from the audience. You can use the chat feature and you can be completely free to ask questions to our panel. Talking about the panel, our first panelist today is Mr. Saurabh Wadhwa, who's the Senior Vice President of Organizational Learning and HR at Kotak Mahindra Bank. He's got nearly 2 decades of experience. Saurabh has established himself as a formidable force in the financial services industries, and he's previously headed the L&D function at Bajaj Finserv and InduSInd Bank. So we are very happy to have you on board, Saurabh. And,
Thank you. Thanks,
and our
Vikram.
second panelist is Mr. Saumil Paronigar. He's the Deputy Vice President and Head of Training at IndiaFirst Life. Saumil also has around 20 years of experience in sales and salesforce training. Saumil is an esteemed speaker, and he's an enthusiastic leader who strives for excellence and perfection in performance. With experience in leading training functions at Tata AIA Life Insurance, ICICI Prudential, and Bajaj Allianz, Saumil brings in his knowledge in the field of sales enablement, and we welcome you, Saumil.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
The moderator of our session is Mr. Karthik Mola. He's the founder and CEO at Inspiring Technologies. Karthik has over 11 years of diversified experience. It spans over banking, HR consulting, and technology in North America, UK, and Asia. He is constantly striving to leverage technology to solve dynamic business problems and to build a much more effective learning solution for today's workforce. Objective of this virtual panel discussion is to get perspective and details on how organizations should really enable their sales force to boost performance in this virtual environment that we have. And with that, I will now leave this virtual podium open for Karthik and the panelists.
Vikrant, just a quick one. While you introduced me that I headed the L&D function with Bajaj Finance. That's, I would want to correct it. I had the behavioral learning vertical for Bajaj Finance, and I was head of consumer banking L&D at InduSInd Bank. So that's the two changes that I wanted to make here before we move ahead. Sorry.
Sure.
Over to you, Karthik.
Thanks a lot, Saurabh. Welcome, everybody. It is honestly an extremely pleasurable opportunity for all of us to have you amongst us. I also want to say that it really doesn't feel like we're going to be doing a panel discussion because, and the good thing is, unlike doing this physically where there would be a platform and a podium, we're all as virtually dispersed as we can be. And Saumil, Saurabh, and I were just discussing that we are as much the participants as you are the panelists. So all three of us collectively, thank you for joining us. I know the topic is extremely contextual and relevant for everybody because this right here is the way and means in which we will now be communicating for the foreseeable future. And avoid it, though we have tried, I think it's inevitable that we have to embrace it. And with that, thank you again for attending. It's been obviously a very interesting couple of months, as I'm sure it has been for your teams as well. If you really just think about it, 2 months is not a long time. 60 days ago, as sales leaders, some of you who are part of this session today, you would have thought it is religion to meet your customer face to face. And frankly speaking, our customers would have thought it would have been religion to meet with them as well. Unfortunately, now a handshake has to be more in terms of having a video where you can literally get a sneak peek lives of your customers. You can get to see, exactly how they're interacting with their family while working. And so among the other things, obviously the lines between personal and corporate life have further blurred. And with that, the complexity of also selling virtually has just taken a whole new level of complexity, but also a whole new level of excitement. And I couldn't have asked for two better customers of ours and two better people who I personally also lean on to get advice from time to time to help us in a way navigate and also share their perspectives on what we can do as leaders in our respective organizations to navigate this tricky terrain that we all find ourselves in. So Saumil and Saurabh, thank you again. Look forward to having a and if I could just request everybody, all of us who are part of this session to act as if you have no holds barred. We follow the AMA rule, which means you can ask us anything. Please feel free to put it on the chat, and with whatever limited questions we have discussed for this session, we would like to ideally prioritize them or prioritize your questions over the ones we have. So thank you again. So Saumil, Saurabh, I'm going to possibly start this discussion keeping the perspective of our customer in mind, right? Because when you think of selling, whether it is virtual or I think you'll also agree with me that the focus on the customer always has to be the starting point. And Saumil, maybe I'll ask you to kick this off, right? How do you see with customers also putting a very clear on meeting face to face? How do you see their engagement or modes of engagement evolving over the next 6 to 12 months, given that we can't meet them face to face?
Okay. Thanks, Karthik, for inviting, first of all. So very rightly put that, what would be the preference of the consumer for next 6 to 12 months in engaging with or to purchase any product or service? So if you have observed in last 2 months, what you have you have observed amongst all the social media is the usage of social media has been drastically increased by the consumers as well as by the business houses. So let's say if I start relating it with my industry first, we in IndiaFirst, we are predominantly a bank assurance driven company, and the first point of contact for the consumers are our bank. Now, in recent 60 days, the consumers have not visited bank much. So we immediately change our gear. Okay, since consumer is well versed with social media, they know how to use various platform. They know if we send an SMS with a bit.ly link, know where to click and what to go through and how to respond on the question or show a genuine need to buy something. I think the adoption of technology is very fast in the market, and we also know we have also hold the pulse, and we followed that immediately. And this will continue for next 6 to 12 months, or it could be forever. So if I just recall one of the statistics that 48% of Americans, when it comes to professionals, they are working from home. So for them, working from home or connecting with consumers on digital platform or a virtual platform is absolutely a normal life. And I think in India, we will now adopt that very fast. Of course, certain critical decisions where the consumer need to take by meeting the person just to establish the credibility whether the product is genuine or not. Only such kind of limited transaction may happen in a face-to-face meeting. Else, be it anything, be it banking and financial sector or any other product, I think the transactions, the number of frequency meeting in person will reduce. People will prefer digital connect. I'll give one other example. So in one of my agency channel, where people approach advisors or leaders to join us in our agency channel, we call it a business opportunity presentation, where people go and meet and explain the whole proposition in, let's say, half an hour or 1 hour meeting. But today that is also happening in piecemeal technique. Piecemeal technique is that I'm sending something as a video nugget to you just to increase your curiosity. And then I'm connecting through WhatsApp. And then finally, I'm connecting on a virtual platform through a video conference. So consumer is very well, absolutely, our prospects are absolutely okay with that. So consumer is adopting the change very fast. And so it be for all the business houses that know how fast we also adopt the change. And we be with the consumer the way they wanted to get contacted. So not about 6 to 12 months, Karthik. I think this may continue for quite a long time, or it could be a new normal now.
Right. So what you're saying, interestingly, is that some of these habits are obviously going to stick around for a longer period of time, regulations and restrictions in terms of lockdown notwithstanding. And I think the other interesting perspective you gave was also how some of the information sharing that happens in person can actually be staggered over different communication or modes of communication. Saurabh, what about you? What is your experience at the bank been? And for also our audience, who are coming from industries as disparate as logistics and pharmaceutical to retail, what would be your perspective to share with them on the changing consumer modes of engagement?
I I strongly believe what has happened through this pandemic is now people are very conscious of what they want to spend on. They are becoming extremely uh, conservative. It's an uncertain time. They are looking at value and the benefit of everything that they buy today. If you look at overall, in spite of that, the money that is there with the consumer, the overall spending has gone down drastically. So one of the mind shift that's happened is, do I really need it? Because I don't know what's going to happen in time to come for me as a consumer. So it's an uncertain time. They are conscious of what they want to spend money on. So, and if they really want to spend it on, then they are very, very focused on, does it add value and a benefit to me that I still need to buy it in the times that it has. So there comes the complexity of the product and the true need that you possibly focus on for consumer to buy. Second, I also feel consumers today are now not ready to take risk with new people because they have an existing relationships with banks, they have existing relationships some of the sales people, and they today they want to stick to those relationships and not move out easily, which earlier they were open to, because there's a trust factor. To build a trust through a virtual selling and somebody reaching out to them is very, very difficult. So there are two parts. I'm very conscious as a consumer to spend it. I want to hold it and want to check if it's a true need for me. Second, I really want to put in money where I truly trust in something and not otherwise. So this is my view, is how consumer mind shift has changed in last a month or so, couple of months now. Yeah.
Okay. And on that thought, let me ask you a follow-up, Saurabh. So, are you suggesting that given the current situation, the uncertainty of everything, it's more advisable for organizations to hunker down and focus more on the existing customers they have and talk more about how can they further help them with challenges that they're facing and build more trust with them rather than also focusing on new customer acquisition? Is that also something that you're seeing as a approach your bank taking?
Look, no business would ever survive only on the existing customer relationships that you have. Customers go through a life cycle. There's a life cycle to every consumer and a customer that you have. Now, if you stop the funnel at the first end, that there is no customer acquisition happening, eventually it would show a big impact on the long term, that in the overall top line and a bottom line of the business. Most importantly, acquisition still needs to happen. Now the business needs to become conscious. What is the new way of acquiring new customers now? How are we going to do that? How are we going to build that trust with customers? Look, customers reaching out to any social platform and showing keen, that means they already that the trust already exists at this point of time. They believe they are already partly sold. But to start up with and you reaching out to customers, it's most importantly, how do you build that trust with them? And so that they can actually and the connect with them. Most importantly, also build a connect with them is where the skill at the workforce also comes into play.
Okay, fair enough. Saumil, let me ask you another question related to consumers, right? Before all this happened, there was a lot of understanding about consumers being more and more sure about a decision they want to take on any product or service through their own research before they even reached out to, let's say, a representative of a company. So, for instance, since we're talking about insurance, for instance, and I guess we all need it now more than ever, let's say if I was thinking about health insurance, which in today's context is very relevant, I would be looking at doing my own research on Policy Bazaar or what have you, talking to friends, family, to figuring out what is the most appropriate policy before, let's say, reaching out to a representative of IndiaFirst, for instance, or well, not IndiaFirst, but another health insurance company. Do you think with people already being sure of what they want, this virtual way of enablement will further accelerate sales because you're able to then get a larger list of companies or customers who are reaching out to you more efficiently than if you had to go meet them face to face? I think we may have lost Saumil somewhere in the question. Saurabh, would you like to perhaps give a perspective on that?
Could you please just repeat that, what you just said?
Yeah. So basically, with companies or customers being sure of what they want even before this entire virtual situation took place, what I was asking is, I feel it's easier now for companies to actually leverage virtual selling to accelerate sales? Or do you think it's actually going to become even harder, given that now the trust equation between a buyer and seller will be harder to establish? What is your take on that?
So I also firmly believe that people who reach out and show interest in buying a product on a social platform, they're already partly sold onto that. I always strongly believe that. So sales, well, anything that is to do with finding about a customer, analytics, is going to go into digital. But anything that is knowing about so for anything that you wish to know about a customer, the disposable income is going to be through a machine learning and the various data analytics that you would do. But softer aspects, there would still be intervention, that is human intervention, that would be required. So going forward, the sales would just not be, you can't say that digital is going to be a way of selling specific. Of course, the complexity of the product matters. Today, you want to buy a grocery, you will still go to a grocers or something and buy it. But thinking of a financial product or a solution, you still need to expect, because there's intangibility involved. There's a huge amount of trust that is required when you want to put in money. Of course, there's a difference in business, different side of business on asset and liability. But yes, on the liability, when you're putting in money, you are very, very conscious of. So what's important is the phygital has to play a role. When I say phygital, of course, which is a physical human intervention, and digital as well. The digital would help you possibly work on analytics, what the customer wants. But to create that need and to build that trust is where the human intervention comes into play. So both will go hand in hand. I don't think one can substitute the other. The times we need to leverage on digital technologies, but the human intervention is not going to go away as long as the complexities of products remain in finance world.
Correct. One is the complexity. Second, you can also argue, would be the level of homogeneity, because between two financial services firms, there's very little differentiation sometimes between products. And what I hear you say is that in that sense, the human interaction will actually be even more a differentiating factor to ensure that a customer actually banks with you or doesn't bank with you.
Absolutely.
Right. So coming to the next part, right? In your experience with relationship managers and CSMs and other people in the bank reaching out to customers, what do you think from a customer point of view are acceptable modes of communication? And I know it's a very complex answer. Sometimes it also depends not just on the customer, but at the time at which you're communicating. But do you see these modes of communication changing now that everything is happening virtually versus earlier when it was part of also meeting people face to face?
So some of the pain areas that I hear people saying on the ground is they find it difficult to build the conversations with customers when it comes to a virtual connect. Why? Because a lot of people are so used to, and they've well practiced it, and they've internalized those behaviors of sitting in front of a client, gauging a lot about client through being with client. But when it comes to virtual, many a time you don't even know what are the client preferences, what are the choices. Hence, your research about a client becomes extremely critical. So what I know is that to build a connect with the customer and to build a trust, what do you do with the pre-call becomes extremely critical right now in this state. You're reaching out to a client and without having any info about a client and feeling that the customer would be keen to look at you. Unless and until you know enough about a client, you'll never be able to strike a conversation and connect on a virtual world. So my belief is, how much do you know first about a client is the first step. The first challenge that also I have seen people not doing it enough on this side, and they say, look, I've connected so many customers off lately on the virtual platforms, but never been able to, close it and even move towards building that conversation. Second is how do you keep customers engaged on a virtual call? Most importantly, the attention time of a client is always very limited on a virtual call. You need to be very, very sharp in what you want to communicate to a client. And it's also important that you build that connect first and keep the clients engaged on the conversation is, because unless they are engaged with you and is important. If they are not engaged with you, they'll never open up to you. You'll never be able to take it to the next level. So that's the second part of it in that. Third, I would always say, mostly the salespeople I have interacted with in banks, relationship managers, they are finding it extremely difficult to close a sale over a call. Now, third, why close a sale? Because they say that, look, it was easy while sitting in front of a client and we could pick up those buying signals and take something out and say that now it's the right opportunity to close. But when it comes to virtual, it's difficult to figure out what's a buying signal that I pick it up. And when they can't pick up those signals, there are follow-up calls happens, and they don't know how to close, and where they will actually close and ask for, where's the check? How would you put it on table is becoming a concern. So these three, I feel that it's important. When I say connect also comes with a lot of the trust factor that you build in through connect is important. So at the beginning of the conversation, as I said. So these are three important things for me. I feel that is what sales guys actually today struggle in the virtual world.
Got it. So in a way, whatever was happening before, you're just saying that a couple of very important attributes to be a successful seller, such as the customer mode, doing your research before the call, and then really engaging the customer throughout the process become even more important. So it's not a new skill, it's just a amplified skill than what it was before.
Absolutely, it's much more amplified and is required at a very, very high level. You've always required that, and it's not that, but now in the current virtual environment, the way they are connecting with people, it's required at a highly amplified level now. The intensity required for that skill is extremely high.
Got it. Saumil, welcome back. My question just before you had bumped off was trying to understand from a customer's point of view, what do you think in your experience have been some of the preferable modes of communication that your agency, banker, and direct workforce have been able to make better conversations with customers? And have those modes of communication been different based on some variables that you can share with the team?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks. There was some network error and I got disconnected. Very rightly said by Saurabh. I will definitely echo some of the points which I mentioned, and I will add into it. So what approach that we took, instead of shooting the arrow in the dark, we identified first of all with certain analytics that what would be the current need of consumer in this pandemic, when the economy is facing an uncertainty. The person is also facing absolutely uncertainty about if something goes wrong with the main person of the family, the breadwinner of the family, what will happen. So the shift from product push to understanding the need and pulse of the customer, we have identified that which product would be a right product to offer at this point of time, and doing certain analytics, what would be the right set of consumers to approach first. So what we have done, we have identified the prospect, that whom should we approach first. That is point number one. Point number two, how are we approaching them? Yeah, and what is the mode of, you can say, the communication are preferred by them, of course. As I mentioned in my opening remarks also, the social media is one which we are using extensively. Other than that, the whole approach has been broken up into multiple parts. As rightly said by Saurabh, in the erstwhile or in a face-to-face meeting appointment kind of scenario, I can get some cue of the buying signals and I can approach towards the closing the sale. However, right now the entire gestation period from approaching the consumer to crack the deal is delayed. So lots of patience to be maintained. You really need to put yourself into the consumer's world and understand and empathize with the consumer and connect well. You really need to educate consumer also why this is required. Mode of communication. It could be you really need to, for an example, let's see if I'm approaching a consumer in a face-to-face environment. I am just a call away. I book an appointment and I meet consumer face-to-face, and I do a need analysis and then I recommend the product and so on and so forth. But now, first of all, reaching out to the consumer itself is the challenge. So let's say erstwhile you were approaching 100 consumer. Now out of 100, how many of them will actually read your message or will click on the bit.ly link or will respond to your WhatsApp or will check the video nugget which you have sent just to arouse interest? That funnel is changed. Second, no, the people, when they make a mistake, when to close. Okay. So in a face-to-face scenario, the silence of the consumer sometimes is assumed he is ready, and you strike a closing question and try to move forward. But in today, the mode of communication with the consumer is completely shifted in a virtual world. So that patience level is really need to be increased, and you need to check with the consumer that whether they are ready to take the decision forward or not. So the mode of communication which consumer is preferring is, of course, from a telephone call. We are sending certain messages on a regular basis to our existing consumers and the list of identified consumers. We are also sending some collaterals. So the number of marketing collaterals have been increased. Okay, we are sending something new after every week time, just to keep the memory, refreshed that yes, somebody is approaching me instead of one-time effort. So WhatsApp images, communication, persona-based communication, that is what we are doing. So if I'll give a reference to insurance specifically, let's say if somebody in a blue-collar job, that what could be the probable products which consumer will most relate to. So we have done extensive research on that, and then we have identified that what collaterals if I'll send, okay, through a WhatsApp or through an email will be responded to. So that is one, that what we are doing. And of course, we are enabling our sales force to get the human angle more in all the transactions that we do over a call or over a video conference, or the message, that the text, the words, the choice of words that we are doing. Every single thing is more connecting with the consumer, because consumer right now is need some confidence that yes, things will be all right, and he or she is taking a right decision by purchasing any product or service. At this point of time, somebody really need to genuinely show that interest. So the communication, as I mentioned, various modes. However, we are targeting the right consumer based on certain analytics, and the patience level is also assumed, how mindful you are when you are dealing with the consumer.
Fantastic. I think that's definitely some interesting perspectives built in over there, Saumil. Thank you for sharing. I want to get perhaps now into a little bit on the skills level, right? In terms of trying to figure out, obviously you both have mentioned to some extent the prospecting part of things, the bit of research and engagement, leveraging data. So these are obviously skill sets that we've already talked about. But I want to actually step back and ask a more fundamental question to you. Some people, right, as sellers who've been doing this for so long and really build relationships through their personal connect, would understandably have a blocked mindset in figuring out what can the use of virtual selling actually be in terms of not just lead generation but closure. And Saurabh, you briefly talked about this earlier also. How hard has it been for both of you? And maybe Saurabh, you can go first. How hard has it been for you to establish a mindset of selling virtually within the different channels of the bank? Do you see that as an issue, and how have you addressed it?
So how mindful, just say the last bit again, sorry.
So one was about understanding what is the mindset people have, and to what's their view on that, and how have you also overcome mindsets where people have self-limiting beliefs, where they say that this is great to generate leads, build the funnel, but if they're talking about closure, then it's not possible for us to do that over a call or a situation like this. How have you broken that paradigm for people?
I look, generating leads, of course, there are different platforms to continue to generate leads. And if I would have to move to how people end up generating leads and all that, I think most importantly, one thing is important in these times for people to first start demonstrating empathy when they connect with customers virtually. Uh, I have seen in today's time, even I get calls, and with all these tough times that you're passing by, and people jump into the agenda straight away. The first is, it's always a concern, are they actually empathetic towards what's happening at the customer's end, which where everybody is logged in, there's a challenge, and they can't move out. And I'm only referring to current times right now. And it's going to stay, as we say, it's a new normal. This is going to stay for a while. So as the connect happens, the first is, are you genuinely interested and feel that there could definitely be a challenge at a customer's end? People are losing jobs, there are salary cuts being announced across, uh, there's challenge, and you have your agenda of generate a lead or make a sale. Is the first point is to demonstrate an empathy and understand if things are going fine. Even if I'm concerned, that you understand, is the area fine, are people able to move out safely? First of all, that's the most important part of it. I think you can't actually train people with empathy, and that's important now going forward, as that's critical behavior that you need to look at into people when you hire them in sales. So most importantly, I truly believe in times to come, if you would have to hire people in sales, you need to look at one of these as a key uh, behavior that these people should have. And it's difficult to teach people in empathy, by the way. The other parts of it, as I told you, to generate uh, unless and until, which I already spoke of few areas, that unless you know of a client and you know a lot, and there are different platforms, as my friend Saumil already spoke of, that which you can get to know about a client. Unless and you know enough about a client, and you reach out to them and able to strike a conversation basis, that you'll never be able to get a client's attention or keenness to even listen to you. Forget about having uh, shown interest in what you are speaking of. So it's important to know enough about them. So that's what I see as the first point of connect to even generate a lead. That's what I these are few things that I have spoken of, and the current set of people right now are realizing all the more that these skills are important, because many a times the formula of sufficiency works very well in sales. I reach out to enough number of customers and able to still make a sale, even if I don't do it the best way, best possible way, when it's under normal circumstances. Under these circumstances, the proficiency takes over efficiency. The way you do it is rated more than the number of people that you reach out to. Of course, that's important, but the proficiency is extremely important. Is where we now, for the salespeople, they start realizing that there's no end to it, reaching it out, unless and I do it right away.
Got it. Got it. Interesting. And I want to also just ask everyone in the audience, you've also asked some very interesting questions. Incidentally, we're also forming a poll as we speak. Feel free to participate. Saumil, I think one question, which is what led me to ask this question about mindset, is also because a lot of people in the audience are asking about questions like, how are you establishing trust virtually? How are you detecting the buyer signals virtually, right? What is the difference in prospecting in a scenario where we are all, operating virtually? So all this is also coming from perhaps a larger question on the mindset itself that we need to establish for. What is your take on this? How are you trying to break some of the old paradigms give confidence to your workforce that it is possible to detect the buying signal online, and how have you been able to do that? Any story you can share?
Yeah, certainly, and very apt and very relevant question right now for the phase we are going through. So this reminds me one of the case which recently happened. One of my area business head group, a couple of them were having a review call with the zonal business head. And zonal business head all of a sudden he called me and packed me in the call, and he was mentioning, yeah, people are getting lots of objections from the consumer. And that put me immediately in the spot. Okay, that is not an objection. because I think the way I was selling is need a change. Previously, I was using more technical knowledge. I was talking about more on the competitive side of the products, and I was showing how my product is better and so on and so forth. So the whole mindset change, what is required is that, let's say if I give a call to Karthik, do I really need to talk anything about the product in the first call? The genuine connect, believe me, consumer will talk about his or her problem if you really strike a good balance with the consumer. So the first mindset, which what we need to change is going from a street smart salesman, okay, to somebody who is genuinely, and you need to establish that as well, right? So how will you do that? So no, I had you can say a dry run with all these ABHs that, okay, let me become a consumer and you give me a call that, let's say you wanted to approach, because their concern was, sir, if we are making 10 calls, the rejection rate is very high. And with this, we won't be able to achieve our numbers. I said, okay, I am not the God. I won't have all the answers in the world, but let us give a try. So can you give me a call? I'll become a customer and you just do a role play with me. What they observed is, no, they were only pushing the product in the way they were doing before the lockdown phase. And then we have turned the table. I played a role of a salesman, and they become a consumer. And for first didn't spoke anything about product, anything about insurance. It was a very genuine inquiry about the family, their well-being, and how are they coping up with the things. To the level, how are they managing their groceries? So when such kind of basic genuine intent, if you show, believe me, human will connect with the human first. So the mindset what we need to focus on right now is that let's be human. Okay, when you are facing some challenges, the other person also going through lots of other challenges which could be larger than your life. So let's have that perspective first. Getting into emotional intelligence, not to create the buying pressure on the consumer's mind. Okay, for example, Karthik, in this call, when I'm calling you, please, okay, be absolutely rest sure. I'm just wanted to have a word with you to check your well-being. In this call, I'm not going to sell you anything. This is just a genuine, you can say, courtesy call from the bank that we are doing. You will feel, okay, fine. The next call when Saumil will give, I'll pick it up. So if you build that sequence of calling, okay, of course, in the previous time, if you are making 3 follow-ups and you are closing the sale, this time it will take 4 follow-ups or 5 follow-ups. That's fine. But first 2 follow-ups are building that foundation. So that mindset, what we need to change right now is from the pushing the sell or product or anything to genuinely connect with the consumer. That is first. Second, having that patience, said, okay, boss, no, if I'm giving a call to consumer, if I'm meeting, okay, I won't be able to judge the buying signals from the consumer. So I need to check, and very genuinely I need to check. Okay, I may need to ask some closing questions which are very, very open and very, very, you can say, filled of empathy. That I absolutely understand, Karthik. Let's say if your current budget may not permit you to take decision right now, but if you want to start, when do you want me to connect? And then that keeping that escape close, where you're not closing the door forever, you are keeping that door open and you are connecting with the consumer with some other follow-up dates. I think that kind of mindset, that patience need to be developed. Erstwhile, if I was building my book with 100 prospects, I may need to increase, because the funnel ratio, the conversion ratio will change. So what I need to do, I need to keep more prospects in hand. Erstwhile, I was closing 10 out of 100. I may need to have 200, or let's say I may need to have 300 to approach first and to get this 10 sell. However, the more I will connect with consumer with more empathetic nature, okay, believe me, the consumer will feel that yes, he or she is actually getting assisted by someone. Okay, so when people, the Gary Kinder, one of the very leading, you can say the sales guru, he says that why do people buy and how do people buy? People buy from the people they like, and people buy from the people who are like them. If I like you, when will I like you? If you show a genuine interest in me, if you really care about me, I will like you. Okay, if you are like me, if you're talking something like my problem, I will definitely purchase from you. So that mindset, assisting the consumer in taking decision, being empathetic, playing that emotional intelligence in all your dealings, and with practicing genuinely, not to faking it up, but practicing it genuinely. This mindset is what we need to practice, and I have practiced in one of my example which I mentioned, and it worked well. And the whole, I think the bottom up approach instead of the top down approach needs to practice. No, generally the sales leaders ask their team, oh, what would be the number for the day? Instead of that, how many connect for the day, where you know inquired about your consumers. So this whole mindset towards human angle is what is required. That is how it will be preferred by the consumer also. And believe me, if you really show a genuine connect, consumer will talk about his or her need immediately, and it will help you to lead the direction further.
Sure. I'm reminded of the movie with where Ayushmann Khurrana, I think, played a lonely girl in a girl voice and tried to get a lot of supposed lonely people to open up to them. So I think it's an interesting point you make and a very interesting story that you've also shared. So thank you for doing that. It's also very coincidental that we asked everyone in this session what they felt would be modes of communication that customers are at this point open to conversing with or in. And obviously, no surprise, telephone comes to number one in terms of everyone's thought process, both as consumers and as people selling to consumers. One question which comes to mind is, Saumil, this is probably the biggest movement of what's known as inside sales now that's happening, right? Because earlier on, inside sales was only confined to a select few business teams that were calling customers to generate leads. Now everyone, all of us in this session are inside sales professionals in some way or the other. For a very long time, customers or companies have been struggling with saying, do you maximize efficiency in inside sales by having a very well-established script which people have to follow as a process? Or do we leave some parts of it open to improvisation on the person's capability? What side of the equation do you think inside sales should fall under, keeping in mind you want to build that trust, mirror the person's feelings, and build rapport with that individual before then trying to sell?
Okay. One of the very, you can say, one of my liking in this area. So in my practice, I have been a coach also, and the sales call or a coaching call both goes in a same fashion. Everybody must have seen a ball dance. When the partner, the opposite partner, when they take a step, the other person matches synchronize the step with the partner. The sales call or a telephone script or any approach to consumer is exactly the same way. It is a evolution of a dialogue. How the dialogue progresses, your next question should be based on the consumer. You cannot approach all customers with a standard script. Script or any kind of sales approach is a guidance. It's a structure which you should keep in mind. However, don't, it is called that operation is successful, however the operation is that. So you should not make that mistake. Whenever you approach a consumer, of course, this is structure, all the, you can say the sales call structure or a telephone script is a guide that this is how you should remain in control when you make a sales call. However, okay, if you focus genuinely on the consumer, believe me, consumer will give more and more signals. So in any sales call, what will you do? Okay, telling is not selling, right? If you ask more genuine questions, if you really do a genuine inquiry, consumer will lead you, will give you, and over the period of time, you will come to a conclusion that what deal it will be, right? So the structures, of course, need to be followed. We have a huge call center inbound and outbound at IndiaFirst, and when we were training them, we also mentioned that okay, structure is yes, you need to keep this in mind so that it will help you to remain on the call, it will help you to be in the control state, but at the same time, don't forget the consumer. He's a human. You need to talk to him the way he wants to listen, and be very attentive listening. Okay, practice that attentive listening at what consumer is telling all about. Okay, when it comes to listening, I will give a very wonderful example. So listening happens at 3 levels. It's called fact, feeling, and need level. So for an example, if consumer asks you that what is a fixed deposit rate today, and we will not, as a transaction, we may respond, okay, 5.6% or 6%. But what could be the feeling why he's asking? Is he worried about his investment? Is he worried about some goal that he wants it to fit? No. If I inquire myself, instead of responding on the fact level, if I start understanding the need or the feeling level of the consumer, my quality of question will change. Okay, if my questions are more based on the consumer response, believe me, it would be a dialogue. And the more consumers speak, believe me, consumer will give more signals. They will give more, you can say, cues that what exactly they need. So I absolutely believe that yes, structures are required, scripts are required, approaches, certain structure of sales call is required. However, don't forget the human angle. Don't forget the consumer. Structure is just to help you. Be in the dialogue, be in the ball dance, sync yourself with the consumer, and the deal will be definitely closed. That's it.
Okay, sounds good. Let me transition to another question now. And sort of this is it's a fairly interesting question. It's sort of taking the argument that already customers were 80% in some cases ready of what product they wanted to buy. Some people are asking, given that everything is now happening virtually even more, should we focus more on how does the rest of the 20% happen with the seller, or should we try to enable the customer and empower him to complete the rest of the 20% transaction so that effectively we have a do-it-yourself model to a customer buying a product from us? What is your take on this? And this obviously throws open a very big debate on how selling will then take place, right? What is your take on it?
So I will first start with something what my friend Saumil just said, and I want to share a perspective and then gradually move to what you just asked. So what I understand, the first question that you asked and how was typically, should there be a directive way of given to a people to be able to go about selling it to customers, which is a script method, which is extremely directive, or should you let people think about how they would want to connect because they have their natural styles and they have natural ways to build connect and they are creative in their own ways, and should you empower their creativity and let people do it their own ways? And then I transition to it. So recently I was speaking to one of the business leaders and sales leaders, and what he told me is there are always two school of thoughts. One school of thought, you can't straitjacket people and get their creativity down and human part of it and their natural styles. And the other part of it is hence you need not to have a script. You should still have a structure. That's the ideal way. But it's also depends. The other way to look at the other school of thought is following 80-20% of a Pareto rule, where 80% of the people are always at a level that they don't have that intellect, they don't have that maturity, and to be able to do it, and hence they need to be directive. And then hence there should be a script to be followed because they don't have their natural ways and they are not able to connect, or they are not able to strike a conversation that way. So there has to be a script followed. So I would always say no approach either this way or that way, right? All depends on what set of people you have in the team, and hence the approach needs to be aligned to that. For example, if you feel that naturally people struggle and they are not able to build connect and there's a need to do it, you need to go into a directive way until they evolve into somebody that they are able to do it naturally. So it is always put into a habit and then they do it naturally. And if you have a smart people, matured intellect, and they have been doing, they are able to strike conversations with customers without even that, there's still a structure, you give it to them, but eventually they move to, they are able to, you don't need to straitjacket them. But it's all depends on the kind of people that you have with you. And both this, there's nothing right or wrong, as I say, it's the detail to that. Now coming over to what you just asked to it, that the 20% of that is what you said is 20% of people to be able to do it. I would have obviously the way to connect, there's human way is not going away hereafter. If you say that the world has changed, there's not such a big shift which has happened that it's going away. People still come on platform, they show interest, but trust, the lot of buy-in or selling has already happened before they reach to the platform, either through an informal or a formal way. That's not going to go away. The human way will remain, and the connect has to be there always with the people to be able to buy it, and you have to lead them to sale. it doesn't happen naturally that people buy it unless they feel that there's a genuine need and the need is big enough and they want to do it. There's a 20% of it which is going to remain, and the personal connect will always have an equal amount of share in the entire cycle.
Interesting. So what you're saying is, no matter how much of that sales process or decision making, rather, we are able to get to 100% with the buyer researching or finding out information on his own, whether it is for 5% or 20% or sometimes even more than 20%, there will always be a human interface that will ultimately be required to close at least some of the more complex and meaningful deals and products that customers require.
You know, I'll also give you an example now, since my friend is from life insurance, and I want to tell you, people from a life insurance, those who go to Policy Bazaar and want to pick up a life insurance, and they buy it online without anybody and pay it from there, right pay at the sale has already happened before they reach to the platform and click on it. It's not that they have just reached to close the sale on the platform. There's still somebody who's been able to explain it, because the awareness is there, the person understands the need, and he feels it that he needs to have it, and that is where the sale gets closed on the platform. But eventually, that nobody looks at what has happened before that. We see that the sale has happened on that, so people have moved virtually. It's intangible world. There is, people need to be aware and be cognizant of fact that somebody has to make me realize the need for it. And the need always exists, but somebody has spoken to me and made me feel that there's a need and I need to do it. And which nobody looks at that part. The way we look at analytics is, yes, there are 30% of the people who would have come on a platform and bought it instantly. That means there's no human interface required. That has happened before that. Nobody knows about it. Maybe in an informal environment, but it has happened.
Okay. So you're actually giving an example of where the converse has happened, where the 20% or the next mile of the buying decision happened in the DIY platform. But before that, the heavy lifting was actually done by the seller. Interesting. I think that's also a very good perspective for us to think about how will platforms evolve along with humans augmenting them. It doesn't have to be humans augmenting the platform. What you are saying is it can be platforms augmenting the human aspect as well. Very interesting. And I think I want to thank everyone for sharing their views on another very interesting question that we had put up, which is, to what extent in the sales process do we believe virtual selling can be effective? And I think this is also fairly interesting for us to see that the biggest thing that we are finding people say there's a possibility to do is finding issues, unearthing requirements, followed by actually an equal measure of pitching and establishing trust. So I think all of us as a group, as a collective whole, we reverberate with this idea that virtual selling can be effective. Obviously, we are maybe a little too new in the evolution as a marketplace to really see how effective it is from a closure point of view, and I think that's where the 21% is coming. But if I can ask both of you now, as a final wrap up to this session, to probably picture yourself, let's say going to church and making a confession. You've seen things work in your respective organizations from a virtual selling point of view. Saumil, you first. On an authentic level, what do you think are pitfalls or, let's say, mistakes or learnings you've seen your company and your colleagues make, where virtual enablement or virtual selling either could have been better or did not live up to the mark that it should have?
So we I just mentioned that we worked on a various platform to reach out to the consumer. One pitfall, what we have, or the challenge we faced, is that the readiness of the entire sales organization to adopt the change and practice before they approach to the consumer. So what happens? Okay, some new technology development we do. Okay, this is how we are going to approach now consumer. By sending an SMS, the consumer will click on the SMS and we will connect with the consumer over a phone, and we will guide the consumer to complete the application form, and he will fill it up, he will pay the money, and then we are done. So the mistake or the challenges, what I think we faced in initial days, is that I think there should be enough rehearsals to be done. People need to be thorough on the end-to-end process. They need to know that what are the challenges which will come in the call. It could be a network issue, it could be anything. So when you are approaching a consumer remotely, okay, what are the basic education that you need to give to consumer also? that if you drop the journey in between when buying, okay, I will guide you what to take it forward. So I think this all, I think, has not been rehearsed enough when we started. So we immediately understood in the very first week that the number of calls that, no, the leads we have given, the number of leads which is getting responded by the consumer and approached by our, no, sales guys is different. So we understood that whenever we move from one particular platform to a virtual platform, I think the need is understand it thoroughly, give it 1 or 2 day dry run, proper practice, and then you approach the market. And this will go for long now, because let's say if working from home is going to be new normal, purchasing online or a virtual platform is going to be new normal, then I think all sales people who are associated with any kind of product or service selling, they need to understand before they approach the consumer. They need to understand the 360-degree around the product and processes. Okay, they need to have enough rehearsals before they move to the market. So it's not like a bakery product that, no, today the new system has been developed, okay, start approaching consumer on this from tomorrow. So this is something which I need to admit, and we have improved on that. And today, let me tell you that what business that we did in the last April 19, almost 60% of the business we could garner in the month of April 20 as well, amidst all the lockdown and whatever has happened so far. With the grace of God and I think the whole focus from entire sales organization is going in the right direction. We learn from our mistakes, and we are practicing how to, give a better experience, a buying experience to consumer in all the transactions here onwards.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for that closing note, Saumil. Saurabh, how about you? What has been, some learnings that you have at Kotak picked up along the way? Anything you'd like to share with the audience for them to also take away, as things that they can also avoid?
My first challenge is about the leadership at where people need to accept it that this is something that's going to stay for a while. A lot of people at a leadership level, at a sales leader level, and I'm not referring to my organization, it bases my interactions across various industries and otherwise, people are still operating with the mindset that this is a phase that would pass by and eventually we'll come back to the earlier normal. And what happens is, first, the acceptance level is not there that the life would not come back to normal so easy and it's going to stay for a while. Only then you will make an attempt to understand where the gaps are and how you need to bridge those skills or the gaps if there's a need to build that for people to be more effective in the roles. The way people do business, used to do business, and the way people do business now has changed drastically. There's a big shift to it. Now, are you accepting that shift first? And that's because you feel that it's not going to stay, you are fine with it. You say, let's go with the full pace and do it the way we were doing it. When we'll get back to normal, we'll pick it up. Let's build a pipeline. Doesn't work like that, because this is first is the acceptance at a leadership level. That's where I would say that the adaptive leadership comes into play. And am I open to the fact that this is not going to stay? This is going to stay, and I have to accept the fact that there is a gap. Then let me understand if things have changed and the ways to do business has changed. Then I really need to look at where the gaps are now. If the gaps are, I need to potentially identify gaps and be able to bridge those gaps in terms of skills, in terms of capabilities, in terms of infrastructure, maybe sometimes even infrastructure. So all that is required to be done. If you are not agile enough to be able to adopt it and move it fast, you'll always struggle in and be left behind. For example, I've seen a lot of companies being agile, and I've heard Mahindra making ventilators. They have no experience in making ventilators. They've suddenly realized an opportunity. There are companies who've jumped into making sanitizers because they've been agile about it. If you are into business, and unless you don't accept the fact and be agile and quickly change the way you do business and bridge those gaps, you will never be able to make that shift. First, it has to start happening at a top level, and then goes down in building those capabilities in people and building that infrastructure or resources is what is required. So it always has to go top down and not going bottom up. We can't just say that, look, let me work with my people at the ground and build that capability. Unless there's a big mind shift happens at the top level, that this is the way to business going forward now.
Okay, so the gist of what you're saying, Saurabh, is maybe not necessarily at Kotak, like you rightly said, but what you've seen other companies perhaps make a pitfall is perhaps in some sense being in denial of what's happening and whether it's going to stick for a while and become a habitual way of how business will be conducted. And that itself will become a perilous decision where the sales force will also then refuse to be agile and not change their ways to adapt with what the customer requirements are. Correct?
Yeah.
Great, great. Well, with that, we've also hit the 5 o'clock mark. So before wrapping up, I just want to share with everybody that we've had a very interesting conversation, of course. But if you wish to share it or if you wish to go through it again, rest assured this has been recorded. We will share it back with you in due course so that you can make the most of it offline as well. And more than that, I'd like to really thank you all for asking the questions that you did. Honestly, I was busy also formulating those questions and then asking it to our panelists. So thank you for not just making my job easier, but for being so much involved in this entire conversation. I think your inputs also on both the polls in terms of what you believe are effective ways of communicating to customers, and also in the sales cycle, what part of it can be done effectively virtually, is a very revealing aspect of what we as an industry, as a collective whole, would be evolving towards. And on that note, I think the input, Saumil, that you and Saurabh have given us have been extremely specific, a lot relevant with examples that you have shared from your interviews. And I'm sure all of us in healthcare, in logistics, and retail, and all the other industries that we are representing, we would have seen value in. So I want to thank all of you again. Wish you a very, very happy and safe weekend. And above all else, happy selling. Thank you so much, and stay tuned for more in the coming weeks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.